Why Shaolin Wushu is effective in a street fight. When you live in an environment where street fights are common, or bullying is, you just may have thought of learning a martial art. As per usual, the first thing you'd think of is Kung Fu. But then how effective can that be in a real fight, especially when there's need to defend yourself? Many people will be quick to say that Kung Fu and its fancy moves don't work in the real world, especially with the fact that none of these have been seen in MMA. But really, how true is that? Well, today's video will be taking you through how effective Shaolin Wushu is in a street fight for self-defense. So if you were one to enjoy watching Bruce Lee show off his iconic Kung Fu moves, or even if you weren't, just take a bite and stick around to the end. Let's dive in. One thing people love to point out is how Shaolin Kung Fu looks a lot like the ballet of martial arts, and can barely do any damage. Talk more of being a means of defense in a street fight. The truth remains that most martial arts are quite effective in street fighting and for self-defense, Shaolin Kung Fu included. Kung Fu is considered one of the most highly effective self-defense mechanisms in martial arts, especially if you can learn to use it for the following reasons, which are, especially with the fact that there are no rules, and secondly, this art is focused on the type of strike that's designed to disable your opponent. Kung Fu is the perfect art of self-defense. This particular art of Shaolin Wushu or Kung Fu originated in China over 4,000 years ago, and as it continued to develop, it went by names like Goshu, Gong Fu, and now Kung Fu. So these names can be interchanged, especially with the often used Kung Fu. The major reason for the origination of Wushu was for survival, and later on in the weaponry age, the army utilized it to defeat the enemy while regular citizens used it as a means for physical training and self-defense. But when you watch it in action, what you see is a sort of dance ritual which could have an opponent screaming in pain from the strikes and blows. But unlike the performance that many see, Wushu as street fighting is nothing like that. It's straightforward and happens very fast, at least in most instances. So you don't have the chance to show off the same old graceful movements or styles of fighting in Wushu. However, an essential part of almost every martial art, Kung Fu included, is discipline and self-control, which is why you never get to see trained fighters attacking others, especially because it's not what these skills are meant for. Another very notable reason why you rarely see a trained Kung Fu fighter fighting in public is because of how much damage they can cause to their opponent, like crippling, blinding, or even killing the opponent. Yeah, it gets that intense. And when fighting, whether an untrained or trained fighter, there are techniques like strikes and kicks that can be employed to make it a pretty easy challenge. And luckily, in a street fight, it's very unlikely that you'll get challenged by someone who has any skills. So if you happen to be a trained Kung Fu fighter, you'll have more advantage over them, with your maneuvers leaving them incapacitated and the fight ending almost immediately. And that's another factor many people don't think of when it comes to Wushu: speed. If you've ever been trained in Wushu, you'll agree that in this training, there's a rigorous transformation of mind and body from the use of their hands and feet. And to increase and master the speed of their punches and kicks, the students are subjected to training in water. But just with the regular self-defense training, you're guaranteed to be protected in a random street fight. And considering this is a street fight, some people might choose to be very violent. But as a trained Kung Fu fighter, you can use a great number of techniques as you wish. You're most likely wondering why you can't go brutal against a brutal opponent. Well, it's important to understand that in Kung Fu, you're trained to stay calm even when you have an aggressive opponent, and not just stay calm, but also be confident. Now, the effectiveness of Shaolin Kung Fu is solely dependent on the style, skill of the fighter and attacker, and where the fight is enacted. Well, this art's made up of several styles, and this makes it highly effective considering how it's made up of a combination of kicking, wrestling, grabbing, and hitting. Once you can skillfully put all these approaches together, you're sure to have your opponent on the ground in no time. Some of these techniques even help support flexibility, strength, awareness, balance, power, and most importantly, endurance. The truth is that it's very unlikely that you're attacked by a Muay Thai fighter or Krav Maga fighter, because as I mentioned earlier, trained martial artists do not initiate such fights. So already you have the upper hand in such a fight if you ever get attacked. If you've ever been involved in such fights or witnessed such, you'll agree that these bullies have no discipline or even skills. So when they ignorantly attack a skilled Shaolin Wushu martial artist, they'll have a story to tell. However, if there's one thing professional martial artists believe, it's that the best way to win a fight is to avoid it. While many people might see this as a weak approach, it's usually the best and should be in first, but in cases where you can't and you have no choice but to defend yourself, then go ahead. But here's something that needs to be said because not many people know this. Even though the Shaolin Wushu can be very effective in a street fight, remember, it's a street fight. And for a bully who lacks every form of discipline, they could start picking all sorts of weapons with anything they find, even the littlest things like sand or sticks. So for sure, you may leave the scene with a couple of injuries or gashed eyes and whatnot. However, it's still very safe and clear to say that Wushu will be very effective in inflicting a lot of pain on the opponent. What's a gashed eye for a few days compared to a separated bone for months? I mean, it's quite evident how much damage this martial art can cause. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give that like button a smash and subscribe. If you'd love to see more videos like this, don't forget to ring the bell notification so you don't miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.